Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's an expert on China and many other things. It's Gordon Chang. He's got a new book out called Plan Red, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Gordon, how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm fine, Joe, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So I understand you were in transit as the debate was happening last night, which is great. But you are up to speed on what was asked of Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor, about China, specifically about Hong Kong, about Tiananmen Square, about Beijing. What's interesting is I think that I've told you this before. I adopted my daughter Gia from China, and I went to China and I Googled Tiananmen Square from the 1980s, and it said that one person died accidentally from a ricocheted bullet, when I think you and I agree that thousands were killed because they wanted democracy and freedom. So China really does squelch any information about what actually happened that day, right?
Yes, it does, because it's trying to erase memories. And what is really ironic is that Deng Xiaoping, who was the Chinese leader at the time, actually ordered the People's Liberation Army to kill civilians because it wanted to show China that it was willing to do anything to stay in power. But his successors have tried to erase the memory because they're so embarrassed by it. Yeah. And now Chinese people have a very different view of the party, one that Deng Xiaoping would be very concerned about, because the Chinese people sometimes are defiant. And that's exactly the thing that Deng Xiaoping did not want them to have.
Don't tell anybody, but while I was there, I had my computer at home set up to where I could log in through a proxy and actually see Google what it was saying in the United States. And I compared and contrasted it with my mother and my daughter who I traveled with. And I showed them, look at this. They're really squelching the information. So on one hand, I get what you're saying. If you want to be the strong-armed leader, you want to say, yeah, we killed everybody. How dare you get out of line? But the leaders successing him, they now want to act like it didn't happen, and we really are for all the people. Is that the change in narrative that they're trying to do?
Yes, and I think that it is fascinating because it shows the mentality of two sets of leaders. And essentially, the leaders right now want to portray the Communist Party as benign. And I think they want to do that because they're worried about what people outside China think, because China wants to rule the world, not just dominate it, but to rule the world. And they want everybody else to submit. So they've got a very different take on what is required for China to be able to exert power everywhere.
It's Gordon Chang. Go follow him, Gordon, Chang. His new book is called Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Came out yesterday. Go and get it right now at the usual spots. When I was there, tell me if this makes any sense to you, because you lived in China, right?
I did for 5 years, from 1996 to 2001.
A very important time. So when I went 13 years ago, I had this overwhelming feeling, and maybe it was just internal in me, but I had this feeling that I was no longer a guy with freedoms. I had the feeling that I was being watched at all times. Gordon, as you probably know, I had to hand them $100 bills that were crisp and just newly made, and I don't even know who I was handing them to get our daughter Gia, who we love very much. I mean, I love that I went, but there was an immediate feeling that I was no longer in Kansas, and I was Dorothy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Is that real, or is that internal to me?
No. That's absolutely right, because as a foreigner, you would have been watched. And today, you'd be watched even more because they basically have 700 million surveillance cameras. They use 1.6 billion cell phones to monitor people. Wow. It is a near total or total surveillance state. And the Chinese people feel it. And of course, foreigners should feel it, because that's exactly what's occurring.
They're not using money anymore, are they? They're doing everything digitally so that the government can track?
Yeah, they're trying to move to what they call the central bank digital currency. And they're doing that because they want to be able to control people. They want to see what they're going to spend, and they want to be able to encourage them to spend on certain things. So, for instance, your money can disappear if you don't actually use it within a certain period of time. Wow. Is one of the things that they're planning to do. So it is fascinating. The other thing, Joe, that they're doing with their central bank digital currency is they're competing with Ali Ant Group and with Tencent Pay, because they run private platforms, and this government doesn't like that.
It's all, I mean, people don't understand the difference in mentality. Now, when I was there, don't tell anybody, I wanted to buy myself a knockoff watch, okay? So I met somebody in the street who took me to a warehouse, who opened up. I could have been killed and left for dead in this warehouse, where there was a selection of these knockoff watches. They only would deal in cash. They only would deal through. We had our former exchange student was from China, so she was interpreting. Otherwise they would not trust us. So there's a lot of black market happening, I would guess, if the government is tracking all of the digital money right there from the central government. I would imagine that the black market's growing there. Am I right about that?
Yeah, at the time that you went, you would have been able to do that. And you can still do that in China, but it's a little bit harder because the regime, for various reasons, has a different attitude towards this. But essentially, they're very happy for Chinese people to make money on knocking off Western products.
Right.
And that was certainly true when you went.
It's completely illegal. I get it, and they shouldn't be knocking them off. But I just wanted to see if I could. And I was there again with my interpreter, who was very, she knew the area like the back of her hand. She's from there. She was an exchange student with us for a year, so we had that benefit. I don't know how I would feel had I not had her with me, because I could easily have been robbed and left for dead. I don't know if they do that there, but again, the overwhelming feeling was you had to sneak around just to have any semblance of freedom. It's Gordon Chang. Get his book. It's called Plan Red: China's Project to Destroy America. It is out now. Came out yesterday. I know that you didn't see the debate as it was happening, but I know that you know of the allegations with Tim Walz. Nobody seems to want to ask him this, and I don't know if anybody will before the election, but how are you in the National Guard while you were going to China 15 or 30 times? And the students that he's had in his classrooms over the years have said he always touted the praises of the Chinese system, not the Chinese people, the system and the way they governed. Clearly, he's somebody who has an affinity. He kept on going back. Last night, he said, we took basketball teams, we took baseball teams, we took our classes to China. I'm not sure why you don't take them to Mount Rushmore and you got to take them to China, but he did this a lot of times. What is there to gain by the Chinese government to have a guy like that? And what is it there that a guy like that can gain by going there? Is there anything?
Well, the Communist Party loved that activity because it
Really?
exposed high school students to Communist Party propaganda. And matter of fact, that activity, which was continuous, had to have been approved by the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which is the part of the party that subverts foreign societies. Now, Tim Walz could say, well, I was young and stupid then. But the problem is that as governor of Minnesota, in other words, right now, he has had continuous contact with Communist Party front organizations. And so this has been a continuous love affair between Tim Walz and the Communist Party. And we know about this because of the Daily Caller reporting, which shows that his contacts were continuous. So the American people need to ask Tim Walz, what does he really think about communism? And is he a communist sympathizer? Because he exhibits the traits of one. I'm not saying that he is, but when you look at what he's been doing and what he's been saying, as you point out, there's a pattern there which is extremely disturbing.
It's Gordon Chang. Go to GordonChang.com. Follow him on X. He's a great follow. The man knows his stuff. When it comes to Walz, you and I spoke briefly before we started the interview, and he's kind of going, well, I'm Minnesota Tim, and mind your own damn business, and I'm just a regular guy. I love small business. He wants us to think he's just this doofus walking around the Midwest, and he's not. He's a guy who has not only gone there 15 times. Now they're saying 15. They said 34 first. They changed it to 15. You don't keep going back, and as you said, without the Chinese government knowing that. So the Chinese government knows they're getting something out of him by maybe in a short period of time indoctrinating whoever he brings. But what is it that they get from him directly? Do they know, Gordon? I'm gonna put out the red carpet for this guy. He's gonna push our agenda in his classroom. Is that what they think they're getting?
Yes, and remember, Tim Walz talked about how he was never treated better than when he was in China, and there's a reason for that. And they shower the guy with gifts, small trinkets, but certainly enough to change him or to make sure that he would continue propagating Communist Party narratives.
It is Gordon Chang. Go and get this book. It's called Plan Red: China's Project to Destroy America. When he was asked last night, they actually asked him a question that I didn't know. I know about his stolen valor claims. I can call him a liar because I've proven it by having the actual guy who was the CSM that took over for him, that took the people to Afghanistan. I have the receipts on what he said about his service. I didn't know that he claimed to be in Hong Kong when Tiananmen Square happened. I didn't know that he did that. And what a weird thing to say. It shows that he's a guy that wants to be self-aggrandized. Hey, I was there when the big freedom fight was going on in China. He wasn't. It turns out he was there after it already happened, and months later, in fact. Last night when asked about it, Gordon, he couldn't get out of his own way. He just, as we said a minute ago, sort of, I'm just kind of a dumb guy, and I messed up the dates. Well, he messed up the dates exactly to make it look like he was there when the biggest freedom movement in the world was happening. What do you think he gains out of that in his position now, if anything?
Well, I guess he felt for some reason that it would benefit him sort of to identify him with a freedom movement, because he has been concerned about his Communist Party connection. So I think he's trying to burnish himself as being a human rights activist. I don't know. We've got to ask him. He has not been forthcoming about all of this. And by the way, when he was talking about being in Hong Kong at the time of the massacre, he was very specific about things, which means, we can all misremember dates,
Yeah.
but it's very hard to misremember all of those details that he now seems to have recalled.
Yeah.
And now, when called upon it, he has to say, yeah, he misspoke, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's all very strange. He always starts out the line with, these people know me. As if, no, we don't know you. Obviously, we keep on fact-checking you. There was more fact-checking last night on J.D. Vance, incorrectly, than there was on Tim Walz. They pushed him a little bit on the Tiananmen Square thing. But I want to go back to when it actually happened, because you've got such vast knowledge on it. Gordon, was there a chance, had things been a little different, that the people of China might have gotten freedom out of that, or was there no chance that would have succeeded?
There was a chance. Just to give you an example, with Deng Xiaoping, he wanted to make sure that those protests ended. But there were a lot of people in the Communist Party hierarchy who very much wanted to accede to the demands of people because they felt that they were just in this.
Right.
Also, it took Deng Xiaoping a long time to find an army unit that was willing to march on Tiananmen Square, because there were a lot of senior officers who said this is not what the People's Army should be doing.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. This could have turned it out very differently.
When I was in Tiananmen Square, Mao's picture is everywhere. Is he just like the god of China? Why is he still so heralded this long after his death?
And Chinese people ask this very same question.
Do they?
About why his portrait is still above the gate of heavenly peace. And a lot of Chinese people don't like that. Now, the regime is extremely coercive, so you don't see protests very often. But when they do happen, they're explosive. And the Chinese people are very volatile right now. And the party is just sort of hanging on, which reason why the party is very insecure right now about its grip on power.
Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, from Gordon Chang. The book is out now. Go and get it. You can go to gordonchang.com. Go to where you normally get books. It came out yesterday. We're not in a military war, obviously, with China, but there is an internal war going on. There's a trade war going on. Listen, I'm a Trump guy, so I like that he put the tariffs on. Biden knew that he had to keep the tariffs, and he actually increased the tariffs. I think that's the way to balance it out for American workers. Are the tariffs on Chinese goods coming in, are they effective? Does China hate them? And I hope they do. Or are they ineffective, do you think?
Well, certainly Beijing abhors those tariffs because they talk about them all the time. And we know from 2018 that China actually picked up between 75 to 81% of the cost of the tariffs. So all these smart people in New York and Washington who said, oh, this contributed to inflation. Well, no, it didn't, because American consumers, by and large, didn't pay for them. So they were good for us. Also, I think that President Trump, when he talks about increasing those tariffs, that's a good thing, because what we need to do is stop funding the war machine that is configuring itself to kill Americans.
Well, I mean, Chinese, I could be wrong with it. Chinese leadership, they configured themselves to own our manufacturing. Almost all of our pharmaceuticals come from China. Now the longshoremen are on strike, and all that stuff that we rely on China and other countries to bring us, we're not making it here anymore. Did China do that on purpose to where they know they've got us, and anytime they want, they can squelch our goods that we need that we're no longer making here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of their plan. And during, let's say, March 2020, for instance, that was the height of the coronavirus pandemic. Right. China actually threatened to throw the United States into, quote, a mighty sea of coronavirus. So, yeah, they clearly know their position in the industrial chains, supply chains, and they will exploit it, as they've been doing by cutting off some vital minerals for export to the U.S.
It's Gordon Chang. Get his book called Plan Red. It's out now. It came out yesterday. Gordon, do you know why it benefits some in this country, in their mind anyway? It doesn't literally benefit them, but they think it benefits to have this Chinese acrimony when it comes to manufacturing and trade, yet continue to borrow money from China to pay our bills. Why do we keep going to a country that I don't think likes us for what it is that the government's overspending?
Yeah, well, it's a country that has declared us to be an enemy. So it's maybe just a little bit more than just dislike.
Yes.
And we certainly shouldn't be critically dependent on it. We're borrowing too much money because we're spending too much money. This is just crazy. It's got to stop. But, at this particular time, the elites in our country have the view of, yes, we need to have this relationship with China. Actually, we don't. That's a complicated issue, but we're a far stronger society than China. So we should not be bowing down to arrogant Chinese who wanted to take away our country and our freedoms and sovereignties. And that's what they want to do, Joe. They want to destroy the United States because they believe that as long as the United States exists, the Communist Party of China will not be secure.
It's crazy. I mean, I can't even get into that mentality. It's Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Gordon Chang is the author. We've got him on today, and it's always an honor. Go to GordonChang.com. Follow him on X. Let me just throw something out there. We often hear that the Iranian people love the West. They can't stand the theocracy. They don't like the Ayatollahs. They don't like their government. They love us. They love Western culture. I watch a lot of videos of a guy from New York who speaks like 30 languages, and he goes over to China, and he's talking to people, walking through the streets, not Beijing necessarily, the outskirts, and these people just love him. They love that he's from the United States. They can tell that he's an American. They love that he speaks the language very well, and they just want to take pictures with him and do his hair and everything else. Gordon, I found some love a little bit when I was there, but again, the Chinese Communist government was controlling my visit because I was adopting a child. This guy's just out there enjoying. His wife is from China, so they've got that as well. But they really appeared to love him and the fact that he was from America. Is that widespread there among the people?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it because, in a society like that where that question that you asked would be very sensitive, people may not give you an honest answer.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people there love the U.S., and we know that because, we've got all these migrants coming across our southern border,
right,
and many of them are who they say they are, which is people who are desperate to live in a free society, and they want to live on the best one on earth. But right now, there's a lot of indoctrination to hate Americans and to hate Japanese in particular. So there are mixed feelings about this, as you can imagine, and especially in a society where all the messaging is supposed to be controlled by the Communist Party, and they do a pretty good job of controlling the messaging.
I can't wait to read this book. I'm so you could tell I'm very interested in Chinese society, the people of China, why they continue to be under this iron-fisted rule over there. And I love that you expose it every single time. We didn't get into Confucius Institutes. We didn't get into Hollywood and China's grasp on Hollywood. Let's do it again soon, can we? Because there's so much more that I want to talk to you about.
Absolutely. This has been so much fun. So thank you, Joe. I
love it. I'm honored every time. Go and get his book. It's called Plan Red. It's Gordon Chang. Go to GordonChang.com. And we're back after this. Stay right here.